Nation One Voice. This is your host, Mr. Eke Ukoumunne, and greetings to all my Nigerian countrymen, both within Nigeria and in the diaspora. I'm sure that you are surging and rising upwards, because that seems to be the Nigerian mentality. Wherever we go, I've said it before, UK, US, wherever we go, we always find a way to rise. And I believe that is by the help of God Almighty. As I said to you before, I am the visionary of this platform, One Nation, One Voice. You can join us on Facebook. You can join us on Spotify now. We can join us on YouTube as you are now. What do I want to say? Well, the last message that I posted was an audio message. I spoke the truths of my life. I'm a born-again believer. I believe in Christ. I know He's the way, the truth, and the life. But I also spoke about many other things that I feel are issues in regards to our forward movement, or are hampering or hindering our forward movement. We've spoken so many times over and over again. I'll speak about it again. It's so important that we change our mindset as Nigerians. We have to change our mentality. Just because we've been doing something for 40 years, 50 years, 60 years or over doesn't make that particular thing right. If it's not progressive, if it's not positive, then I can guarantee you most often it's not the correct or right way of doing things. We've spoken about tribalism. I want to touch on some things actually. Let me touch on, it's going to be a bit of an ad hoc podcast, but let me touch on some of the comments, or a few of the comments that I have received. And I received a comment from an individual, I think it was on probably 2 podcasts ago, and they said, Nigeria is a British-made company, so we should all break apart. And it's funny because I can't speak for that particular individual, but I can say for many people that say, Nigeria is terrible, it's a British-made company, the British brought it together. You've heard me talk about many other nations. Many nations are man-made nations. Nevertheless, they've managed to progress, move forward with different ethnic groups. However, when you say it's a British-made company, and many people are sort of like, it's a British-made company, but then give them the opportunity. I'm talking about for those that live in Nigeria. Give them the opportunity to have a visa to go and see the British, to go and live in the UK. You will see how quick they'll be happy to go and live in the UK, even though they have a bugbear with the British. They will be happy to go and live in the UK and to adopt the British passport and throw away the Nigerian passport. Look, at the end of the day, I've said this before, let's not contradict our own beliefs or our own statements. Let's not be hypocritical. Firstly, did the British, are they the ones that brought all these ethnic groups, all these tribes together to make that country, that country called Nigeria? 100% they did. They did it for I've said it before, they did it according to their own incentives, and why they had their own incentives to do that, right? But does it mean just because the British brought us together, we are unable to live together? I'm still going to continue to say till tomorrow that if in your heart is division, I can guarantee you that even amongst your own tribe, you will still have a divisive heart. You will still find a reason to divide. Even in your own family, you will find reason to divide. And this is why I say it doesn't really matter. Yes, I'm a born-again Christian, but it doesn't matter if you're a Muslim or you follow some other religion. To me, you're a human being. We have similar goals. We have, in some senses, as human beings, we have similar things we want to achieve. We want to send our children to school. We want to have a good job. We want to bring a good income. We want to be able to support our household or whatever it might be. We want to have good education. These are, we eat, drink, sleep, we bleed, just like any other human being. So there are commonalities. That's why it's not important to me as an individual, whether me being an Igbo person, whether I now associate with somebody that's Yoruba or their Hausa or their Tiv or their Fulani or their Kanuri. These things really bear no relevance because we're just all human beings, right? And that's why I said, in the audio podcast, I was saying for those of us that, I'm not religious, but I know what people say I'm religious, but you know what I mean, have the faith, or those that, say that they are religious. Well, if you're religious and you believe that there is a God and there is a creator, then you have to know that you're one of his creation or one of his creations, but then there's 200 million or so, in Nigeria that are also his creation. So I just don't believe that one can say, I believe that there's God and there's creator, God the creator, and then hate those that he created. I think that is a complete contradiction of any belief or statement. Now, you may not completely agree with everything another individual says. That still doesn't make me hate them. Another thing I would say about Nigerians is that we have to get out of this individual mindset, this individual mentality, or even a group kind of mindset and mentality. Why is it okay if there's peace in my section of Nigeria if there's not peace in another section of Nigeria? So let's say I'm in a region, I'm from the southeast, or I'm from the southwest, or I'm from the south, or the northeast or the northwest, and there's peace, let's say, in the northwest, but there's not peace in the center of Nigeria, or people are being killed in the south, but because I'm not in the south, it doesn't matter to me. And then start making excuses why it's okay for those people to be killed. I think this is what I'm trying to say. Let's not follow the avenue that many of the politicians want to get us down, which is just putting us in that place of divide and rule, and finding ways. They will find ways that we should divide because they don't want us to stand, right? The Bible says that a united house will stand, a divided house will fall, right? So for me, it's just simple. As I said, we have commonalities as human beings. So let's look at those commonalities instead of looking at those differences. I am from what you call Igbo land. I am Igbo, right? But that doesn't mean that I agree with every person that is in Igbo land. And that brings me to the point I was making about the coup before, when people say that it is an Igbo coup, it was an Igbo coup. It's not an Igbo coup, because if you're saying it's an Igbo coup, just because it had some Igbo officers, that does not mean that the whole Igbo population was part of that coup or had knowledge of that coup. And that's the only way that you could call it an Igbo coup. Hence the reason why I've said so many times before, and I'll say again, if that was an Igbo coup, then we would have to say that the majority of the coups that were carried out by those in the northern part of Nigeria were northern coups. And again, you know what I think about this whole northern southern thing. We have multiple tribes in the north, multiple tribes in the south, so you really can't get into that. And they really have their own differences as well, to be honest with you. And that's, again, comes back again to what I was saying about mindset and understanding. How much, if you live in the northern part of Nigeria, how much do you know about the southern part of Nigeria? If you live in the southern part of Nigeria, how much do you know about the northern part of Nigeria? Or are you just grouping one mass and just all people together, which is, again, incorrect. So there's something I want to speak about. We're speaking about, on Facebook, I actually posted something called mismanagement of resources. That was a long time ago, and I find that, and the reason why I wanted to post this, because I wanted Nigerians to understand the potential that they stood on. And I used an example of a man that was standing on a plethora of ladders, and he was trying to get over a wall, but he couldn't find out how to get over the wall. But that's the same thing. Like, Nigerians are standing on a wealth of resources. We've got over 50 major resources in Nigeria, from gold to oil to uranium. You could go on and on and on and on, to bauxite and to rubber. You could just go on and on. And those resources are they're wanted and valued and required by the international community. So it's not like we can't, I mean, Nigeria is almost, to me, it's like one large marketplace in regards to the resources that we have. And that's not even as great as the human resource, when we think about that 65 to 70% of the Nigerian population are aged between 18 to 35, which I have said before. That is the engine room. The human resource is the engine room of any nation, any country. Oh, and before people say Nigeria is not a nation because we're not one tribe or we're not one ethnic group, really, if you look at the definition, I wouldn't like to reiterate this all the time, but if you really look at what a nation is, it is a group of people that share a history or some kind of culture. We share a history. So then you could actually call us a nation, hence the reason why Switzerland can be called a nation, even though they're comprised of the French, the Germans, and the Italians. And before anybody says, well, they're all white people, well, just remember the First World War and the Second World War was initiated within Europe, amongst white people, and more than, in the Second World War, more than 100 million people died. Yes, Japanese were involved, and yes, they spread over to Southeast Asia, but the fact is that it was initiated within Europe, and white people, or what you call Caucasians, killed Caucasians. So again, as I said to you before, blacks killing blacks, whites killing whites, it still comes down to human condition, whatever is going on within the heart, right? So I was saying about mismanagement of resources, and I like to state this because I find many times people are like, you know, all the resources that Nigeria has is in one particular region. It's not. Like, can I be honest? It's not in one particular region. Nigeria is only dependent on oil. I know that they're starting to tap lithium now, but it's only dependent on oil because the leaders post Shehu Shagari, right, decided or realized that they could make a quick buck from the sale of oil, and also, right, which meant, you know, it's a quicker way for them to strip the country at least of its wealth to a certain extent, which I don't really think is really possible to be done in Nigeria nevertheless, but at least they were taking a percentage and not using the other percentage for the people, right, which is terrible. But what I'm saying is that up until Shehu Shagari, Nigeria was self-sufficient in regards to agriculture. We're not there now, right? Why are we not there now? Why can't we be there again? Why is it that in the northern part of Nigeria, where, you know, there have been farmers have been asking continuously for water irrigation systems, why is it that we don't have them? Why is it that we've allowed desertification in the northern part of Nigeria? These are the sort of things that, again, for me, this is why I say sometimes, look, this is why it's so important that we get out of this whole tribal mindset. We must get out of this tribal mindset. Listen, even if, okay, let's just say the majority of presidents have come from what people call northern origin. What have they done? Like, people like, oh no, this is the northern people, it's the northern part of Nigeria. But what have they done for the people? What have they done for the people? The people in the north of Nigeria are suffering. If you want to see abject poverty, you probably see the worst. And yet, many of the presidents have come from what we call the northern part of Nigeria. So again, like, as Nigerians, we must get out of that mentality, get out of that mindset. Stop allowing yourselves to be divided and start finding reasons to unite yourselves and stand on one or two or three points where you can find unity, right? It's just a simple thing. It just requires a change of mindset. So anyway, I was saying about resources, and I put down, if you go into the Facebook One Nation One Voice, you can actually have a look at the full article. But I was saying this to stop boasting from certain parts of the country who feel that, oh, you know what, Nigeria is fully dependent on us. Well, that's not the case, right? It's just not the case. It's just that Nigeria has not had leaders that are enlightened and visionary enough to be able to exploit what is already in the ground and to use. And maybe some of them are just actually just lusting for greed and power, and they're just wicked. It's just what it is, right? But as Nigerian people, we have the option and we have the right to choose to vote who we choose to vote. Now, don't you just love technology? Because I'm trying to look through this phone at the same time. Well, that's one of the things I love about podcasts, and just having viewers that probably join your time, because you don't have to. You don't have to pretend that you don't have similar technological issues. But what I'm trying to say is that, if I look at Abia State, for instance, Abia State's got gold, lead, zinc, limestone, oil, gas, and salt. But I want to pick a state that, people don't think of. Nasarawa State. Not that they don't think of, they just don't think of it in terms of resources. Nasarawa State has amethyst. Okay, let me go on. Sorry. Again. Nasarawa State has amethyst, topaz, garnet, bartex, barite, cassiterite, clay, columbite, coal, and much more, and iron ore. We could go on and on. Let's take another state. I'm trying to take states that people don't necessarily think they have anything. Zamfara has coal, cotton, and gold. And these are resources that we know of. We have not, obviously, they're not inexhaustive in the list. There's probably a lot more resources in those individual states. But let me take another state. Kano has copper, gemstone, glass, sand, lead, zinc. Now, I said this, the reason why I'm saying this, and you can go through all the states in Nigeria, they all have resources. But there's a reason why I went through this and I spoke about this. It's not just that Nigeria is one big marketplace for the international community. And I personally believe that Nigerian companies, we should have Nigerian companies, if we have to start off with government-based companies, or at least government companies that the government has a percentage in. We need to make sure that Nigerians are mining their own land. That's very important. It's very important that Nigerians are mining their own land. We don't want, even though we're a marketplace for the international community in terms of what we can export, but we certainly don't want to be exploited, and we don't want our people and our populace to be exploited. So it's important that Nigerian companies are mining the land with government legislation, right? To make sure that there is equality and rights for the Nigerians that are being employed within those individual sectors. However, there's another side of it, and that is that God has made Nigeria self-sufficient. We are self-sufficient. I'm telling you that we could literally close our borders in Nigeria and we wouldn't feel anything. Like, we are self-sufficient. We really don't need anything from the international community, but the international community needs everything from us. So again, like I said, I'm going to end this podcast here, but I just want to keep on reminding you, we have to change our mindset. Stop blaming. I mean, don't get me wrong. We've had dodgy leaders, right, as they say. So we've had the most terrible leaders at times in our history, but we also have to look inwards. We must look inwards. Otherwise, any one of us could be in that place of governance. And if we have a similar mindset and heart as them, we will do the same things as them. So on that note, God bless you all, Nigerians, both within Nigeria and in the diaspora. That's another podcast with your host and visionary, Mr. Eke Ukoumunne. It's One Nation, One Voice. And I'm looking forward to all your comments, and I'm also looking forward to seeing you for another podcast. God bless you all.